You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right, and welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and joined as always by your co-host, Kevin. Kevin, how are we doing tonight?
Doing good, man. Another wonderful Friday night as we get into week 14 main slates here. The last regular season week of the fantasy football season before the vast majority of playoffs start. I guess I won't say all of them. I can't speak for everybody, but the vast majority, this is it. So, those tuning in, hit us up, ask your questions. Let's get them in. We'll go through them and try and give as much detail and as good of answers as possible to help you make your decisions, especially those of you who are on the fence between win or go home of getting into the playoffs this year. But no, man, it's good to be here with you. It's good to kind of end this chapter of the fantasy football season, right? We're getting ready for the postseason, but to get done with the regular season and kind of see how things are set up for us here over the next 3 weeks. I'm looking forward to it, man. How are you doing?
I cannot complain. I am very much looking forward to this weekend and navigating the buys like there's no tomorrow. Because in some leagues there's not, right? It's this week or go home. And I counted it up in one of my leagues that it's a win to get in type of thing. I'm right there flirting with it. I've got the points tiebreaker, all of that, but I've got to win to ensure I get in. If not, I've got to have some things fall right. But in that league, I've got 7 players on bye this week.
Oof.
So it's picking up players and then trying to you're then navigating that with who do I want to drop?
Yes, that's the big thing. Like, who can I afford to drop that's not going to kill me later?
Yes. So it's been interesting, and it's been real navigating some of those. So, John over on YouTube chiming in with 7 rip. Yeah, it's been rough for sure in that league, but that's okay. Right. We're going to navigate these things through. We're going to do what we can to make things happen and see if we can't pull out some W's this week. And, and then I've got another bunch of other leagues that really is just jockeying for positions for, the difference between, do I have a bye in the first round or am I going to have to settle for the 3 seed, to fight my way through all 3 rounds. So, we're doing everything we can in those leagues too to make sure that we walk away with a bye in the first round, because quite frankly that makes it a lot easier. So,
amen.
Absolutely. So, a lot of fun, a lot of interesting things going on. Right, we had a Thursday night game that was interesting to say the least. Right, like you had a couple of guys really show up, a couple of guys really not show up. The Lions had seemingly everybody that was a defensive starter for them a few weeks ago is not there, and they're, kind of got the replacements going on there. So that was an interesting deal to kind of watch on that one as well. But that's kind of where I'm at. Anything you want?
I have officially put Jaden Reed on my do not draft list for 2025.
Yeah. And that's
I will not deal with this headache again. I don't care if I miss the boom weeks. You have to draft him, and I'm sure he's going to be going about the same area next year because of where his total points were. You have to draft him with such capital. You should be able to count on him weekly for some output. Never, ever did I believe I was going to get a 0 from Jaden Reed against the Lions on Thursday Night Football, where the Packers scored 4 touchdowns,
right,
and he got a 0, 1 target, dropped it, 0. Yep. I am done. Now, thankfully, I did have Josh Jacobs in a couple different leagues. The yardage wasn't there, but the 3 touchdowns sure help. So yes. I did benefit from some of that, but Reed goose-egged me in the home league of all leagues, and I just am seething about it. Like, I had to play him because Nico's on a bye. So it is what it is. I'll survive. I'm still going to be in the playoffs, but now I have an uphill climb to try and retain the 2 seed or get the 2 seed. And I don't know if it's going to happen. It is what it is. I got to fight my way through it. I'll be healthy next week, but he's officially on my 25 do not draft list. Like, I'm done. I'm not messing with it, right? I will take my chances with T. Higgins and deal with his injuries, because at least when he's in, he scores. I will go to Terry McLaurin and just understand that I get wide receiver 22 every single year, and that's fine. I will deal
Except
with
for this year.
this year. He's finally showing out a little bit, right? Like, I mean, there are things that I will go back to the well on. I am not going to mess with Jaden Reed, and I'm not going to mess with Kyle Pitts ever again. Both those guys do not draft list. Goodbye.
Right. Yeah, it has been rough for sure. Interestingly enough, right? Terry McLaurin, actually wide receiver 3 overall in half point PPR this season so far through 13 weeks. Interesting. So
Phenomenal. I
yes.
mean, never ever did I think that was going to happen. And I
Nope.
didn't hate McLaurin coming into it, right? Like, we did talk about him when we did the player thing. Like, just beware. It's a rookie quarterback. Beware. Like, it's wide receiver 2. It's really a flex wide receiver with wide receiver 2 upside. He's blown that projection out of the water. So good for him.
Yes.
But I never saw wide receiver 3 coming. At best, I saw wide receiver like 15.
Yeah. Well, I remember right when we were going through draft night, because I ended up drafting McLaurin. I literally was sitting there going, do I go this guy? Do I go that guy? And I ended up taking McLaurin in that draft simply because I had already taken Jaden Daniels. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this one just for the stack. Right. And at that
It's
point,
worked.
yeah, it's paid off beautifully for me at that point, because taking him in the 9th round of the home league, like, there's going to be a lot of considerations I've got to look at for keeper type of things. So it'll be interesting to see how I navigate through that one. But yeah, that was literally the only reason he ended up on there. Was I needed a 4th wide receiver at that point, and figured that was a good one to go with for a flex to fill in for my bye weeks and injuries. And lo and behold, week in, week out starter. So any other kind of thoughts or anything else we want to hit up, or we want to start hitting up some of the comments and questions?
No, let's jump into it. Seems like we got a steady little stream here working at the moment.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and get on into it here. Terrence over on YouTube, Braylon Allen or Devontae Adams?
Devontae Adams.
Yes, I would agree. John Doe, Worthy or Braylon?
Braylon.
Yeah, agreed. So, Connor or Brian Thompson or Brian Thomas Jr.? For me, it's Connor.
Connor. I'm not trusting Mac Jones. I like these. Boom, rip them off. Here we go.
Right? Like, this is fun when we get straight up, straight down type of deals, and we're in alignment on those. John Doe was saying that it's PPR. Yep, doesn't change
James
the fact
Conner.
of who I'm saying on either Braylon or Connor. Mario saying good evening. Given the Breece Hall news that they had to pivot.
That makes sense based off the conversation we had on Tuesday. Understandable. Being downgraded to doubtful. That is another challenge I'm facing in the home league. So to go with that, now I am hoping Kenneth Walker gets downgraded so I can start Zach Charbonnet and at least try and recoup the points.
Right. Yeah, that could be interesting there. Mario saying picked up Braylon Allen and had to drop Debo.
Okay.
Yeah. I can see
Listen,
it.
I don't hate it. Like, I know it sounds kind of dirty, but you got to do what you got to do. And Debo has not been performing to the level that we would expect a receiver that you draft in the 5th round to, or 4th round even, to perform at. So I get it. It sounds crazy. The name value definitely leans towards a what the hell. But honestly, Mario, if that was the worst guy on your roster, more power to you for making the decision. It takes stones to do something like that.
Yeah. And that is a hard thing to do when you're staring down somebody that you spent high draft capital on and has a lot of name value out there. like that you got to move on from. So I like it. John Doe saying, let's get it, boys. Absolutely. Right. Let's get it rocking and rolling. It is week 14, heading into the cash and the trophies section of the season here, and getting everybody ready for playoffs. And actually, real quick, while we're kind of thinking of the cash and trophies and all of that, real quick kind of programming note for everybody. We're going to keep the fantasy football huddle going until week 17, and we're gonna call it quit. We're gonna call it on the week 17 show. So we won't be back for the week 18 or the playoffs. If you guys have questions during that time, make sure you're hitting us up all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Good Old Boys FF, YouTube at Good Old Boys FF, all those places. So it looks like the Friday show, the 27th of December, is going to be the last Friday show for the football huddle. We of course go year round with the Tuesday show, and we'll be doing that year round as well. Also, quick programming note for the Tuesday show, that week 17. We're going to move that to the 23rd as well, with Tuesday being the 24th, and having plans and spending those times with family and all of that. So just a quick programming note for everybody out there tuning in. When you're looking for us that week, things will be a little bit different than normal. So, all righty. Any kind of thoughts around that? Did I miss anything?
No, I think it covers it, right? Like, we are firm believers that the fantasy championship should be held in week 17. We understand that some of you unfortunate souls have to play a week 18 championship, which is why we are absolutely available through other means. We're just not going to do a live show. Like, it's our way of boycotting week 18 fantasy football championships. If you're still in one, ask for a league vote to get it changed. And if people say they want a week 18 championship, then you have a decision. Are you going to suck it up and stay the league, or are you going to say, okay, I'm bowing out, I'm going to find something that's a little bit more relevant?
Right. I mean, the before we moved, I'm gonna take us down a rabbit hole here, but really wish Alex was here for this particular one. But it's although the joy of having a championship in the last week of the season, right? This was before the season got extended to 18 weeks, and in the home league, once upon a time, we used to do the week 17 championship when there was only 17 weeks in the season. And one of the seasons, Alex and I were squaring up for the championship there. I had nobody to really start at quarterback on that due to players sitting, all of that kind of good stuff. I ended up picking up Matt Flynn for his career day on that one. Started him against Alex, and Matt Flynn was the reason walked out of there with the championship. So that's some of the fun stories that you can tell. But Alex to this day, not a happy camper every time I bring that up. So
Exactly.
which nobody would be if you lost Matt Flynn in his career day, guy that, anyway, moving on.
He got a really good contract from Seattle based off of that game. And then
Right.
they drafted Russell Wilson that same year, and he supplanted him in like 3-5 weeks, whatever it was.
Yes, it was quick, fast, and in a hurry. All righty. And then John Doe saying, at least you didn't draft Porta in 2 leagues, still fighting for second bye week playoffs and second and third. Yeah. So, although Laporta's been coming on here lately, but I understand understand that thought for sure.
For what it's worth, John, and I know you're kind of new to the chat, we were advising people to stay off Laporta at his ADP.
Right.
And it's not that we didn't like the player. We just we saw a bunch of touchdown regression coming his way. I guess unfortunately we were right for those of you who drafted Laporta, but fortunate for us because it builds our cred. So I'm going to call that as a victory for the show because we called it correctly. But no, I get it, man.
Yeah, and it's we're just gonna shameless plug here again, but for everybody, make sure that you're liking, subscribing, you're clicking that little bell notification over on YouTube, because during the off season we do a ton of I just said doo-doo. Anyway, cracking myself up. All right. So
That joke. That joke.
yes, exactly. So anyway, during the season or during the off season, we go through and we evaluate a ton of players, and like we'll put up 200. 200 is kind of the average. Different player profiles, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, all of that to help prepare for fantasy drafts and all of that. All of it's available on the YouTube channel. So make sure that you're subscribed, got those bell notifications on during the off season as well for when those start coming up, and that way you can start prepping and preparing for your fantasy drafts there. So, alrighty, shameless plug over. Let's go ahead and hit back into these questions. The roll over on YouTube. I'm pretty sure this is the first time I've seen the roll in the chat. Welcome in. Just unclogged my roster and I got rid of some nasty players. Saying Treylon Burks, for example. I can see that. So it is that time of year to start moving off some of that as well. The roll also saying traded Anthony Richardson and the 108 for the 101. I spent the 101 on Caleb and he spent the 108 on Penix. So A-Rich and Penix or Caleb take a side.
Is it a single quarterback or a super flex?
I'm guessing it's a dynasty and probably a super flex if with that kind of draft capital coming through on it.
I'm torn because I don't like Richardson or Caleb Williams. I was super high on the CJ Stroud and oh my goodness, yeah, Jaden Daniels train over those guys. So I don't hate it, right? I mean, you're gonna get more traditional scoring out of Caleb Williams. His weapons are better than Richardson's. Richardson had been hurt. He has obviously accuracy issues. What kind of gets you is his legs. Right. If he's able to find a good balance, and if he could get to a 67% completion percentage and still find a way to use his legs, Richardson's going to be the better fantasy player because of that ability. Now, if he's still hovering around 58 to 60% and he gets injured more often and everything else, then you're going to get more availability out of Caleb Williams. So that's less pivoting that you have to do. So in my mind, that makes it makes life a little bit easier, if you will.
Right.
So I'm going to lean the Caleb Williams side because at least he's played every game this season, and good and bad, you've been able to count on the fact that he's out there, and it's not making you start, really bad players like Aiden O'Connell and Mac Jones, right? When Trevor Lawrence gets down. But
right.
to be fair, I was not super high on either one of them coming out.
And I mean, at this point, this season, in hindsight and all of that, this season, the Caleb Williams side of it is the better side, right? Like realistically, with dynasty trades and how that looks and works, you typically don't really know which side came out better till 3 or 4 years down the road in those. Like that's just kind of the truth of that. But Anthony Richardson is one of those that, if we're going to see 47% completion percentage, which is what he's at on the season here, that has got to come up quick, fast, and in a hurry. Or I don't know how long of a leash that's going to continue to be there. So there's a problem when your quarterback drops back and less than half the passes are completed. So, but any other thoughts on this one?
No, sir.
All righty. Dan over on YouTube saying, hey, fellas, appreciate the late night stream on the East Coast over here. Half point PPR, Evan Ingram or Will Disley?
Ingram for me. Mac Jones again. Not that he sees ghosts, right? It's a pretty cliche term anymore, but he does keep it central to or short as far as his ADOT, right? Like he just does not drive the ball down the field. So that's what makes Brian Thomas Jr. such a difficult play. Evan Ingram typically is that guy who's going to be hovering around the line of scrimmage. He doesn't run a whole lot of deep routes any longer. So I like him with Mac Jones. I like how that Jags offense is set up. Ingram does consistently see about 7 or 8 targets a week. So for me, it's Evan Ingram. Disley might have a bit more touchdown upside just because your quarterback play is going to be better out of Justin Herbert. But for the consistency and knowing what you're going to get, Evan Ingram, because Disley just got you a big goose egg last week, and I don't want to be dealing with goose eggs, Jaden Reed, as I'm getting ready for the playoffs.
I would agree with that one there, right? Like Will Disley, there is more potential more potential for touchdown upside there. However, this Kansas City and this Los Angeles Chargers matchup, is it going to surprise anybody if we look up and at the end of this game it's like a 17-14 type of score?
That's funny. That's the exact number I had in my head too.
Right. Like that's kind of where I'm at. And at that point, if that's all that's being scored is 4 total touchdowns between both teams, like that's not that great of touchdown upside there. Especially for the Chargers who want to run the ball more so when they get down inside the red zone and in that 5 zone specifically. So that does kind of limit things there a little bit. Evan Ingram, I feel very confident that he's going to get that 7 to 8 targets a game. Put up that 50 to 60 yards, and if he falls in the end zone, even better. But I would lean the Evan Ingram side as well. Alrighty, John Doe over on YouTube. Connor or Nick Westbrook Ekine, same league and flex. Got Brian Thomas Jr. and Nick, but maybe I should plug Connor. Nick's been super hot and a great matchup.
I'm going Connor.
Right.
Again, the Cardinals have been consistent with James Conner. Obviously, you got the contract extension. Yes, Westbrook Kenai has gotten some touchdowns here the last few weeks, and it does seem like Will Levis is finding him in the right position at the right time. However, it is Will Levis, and I don't know that I want to bank on Will Levis being able to read the room correctly, if you will, to propel me. So if Connor's your pivot, I like Connor.
Yeah. I would also go with Connor, right? Like I feel like he's got the very safe floor in this matchup here. If this is something that you're needing to be able to secure a victory and really need somebody to go out there and get you points, and I think James Conner is probably a pretty safe bet for 13 to 14 points at that, right? Whereas he certainly could deliver more than that, but Nick Westbrook Ekine could potentially go off for more than that, right? Like he is a boom bust play, and on the weeks that he's gotten into the end zone, he's been fantastic for fantasy and has been fantastic for for being able to blow up and deliver points to it. If he doesn't get into the end zone though, it is rough sledding. Alrighty. The roll saying that it's Dynasty 2 QB full point PPR. And then I tell you what, we're going to hit up this one here. The roll saying also traded Burrow for the 101 and JSN. He said he wanted to do it now, but not in the offseason because he wanted Burrow for the playoffs. Yes, it's Dynasty 2 QB.
Oof. That's a tough one, man. Like when Burrow's healthy, he is fantasy gold at quarterback, and especially in a 2 quarterback system or league, in a 2 quarterback league where you really want at least one of those true anchor quarterbacks. Burrow is able to provide that. So for the 101 and JSN, I do like JSN. The 101's interesting in any draft, right? I would rather have the proven commodity personally. So in dynasty leagues, I am the guy who is much more willing to give up a draft pick for a proven player than I am banking on I am, going to nail every single first round pick that I have and go for that route. So I would tell you, for me, I think I'd rather have the Burrow side, even with giving up, not being able to get JSN, but that's how I approach 2 quarterback leagues personally. Let's see what else we got here. Let's see. John Doe. Got Tucker and K Dot, and it's my second tight end. Great call. Hey, man, we're trying, right? These are tough calls. I understand that these mean a lot to everybody as we're getting here into getting in towards the playoffs and trying to round out the regular season. So we just hope the insight helps you make a decision, right? Ultimately, you guys own these rosters. They're your teams. You're the one who's going to feel the excitement or the disappointment, depending on success or failure. But we're just happy that we're able to help here. Dan coming back in here. Looking ahead to the playoffs, since I have a bye secured, how would you recommend handling players like Cedric Tillman and Chris Olave? I have potentially 1 week to see what they look like before week 16. Um, so Cedric Tillman had his splash, but I do worry about the emergence of Jerry Jeudy kind of taking over that true number one role in Cleveland. Now, Jameis Winston is awesome to watch, and he is fun to root for when you have fantasy games on the line, right? We saw it this past Monday night in Denver. 490 yards, 6 touchdowns, 2 of them just went to the Broncos, right? Like we saw the complete pendulum of Jameis Winston football. All the success and then all of the failure. So it does make Tillman interesting, especially as a flex play. But I do think with Chris Olave being healthy and Derek Carr being under center, they don't have anybody else to throw the ball to. They just don't. Like MVS, no thank you. So I understand there's deep leagues where I have to play MVS, so I shouldn't discredit it that much. But I do think Olave is going to see a ton of targets once he gets back. With Taysom Hill now being out, it's kind of just Olave and Alvin Kamara, deep shot to MVS, and then whichever other random Joe. The Saints have to throw it out there. So I like Olave a bit more. But Cedric Tillman, not bad to keep there in case injuries creep up, right? We've seen him be able to do it, and we know Jameis is willing to chuck the ball around the yard about 40 to 45 times per game. So that does help your opportunities, if you will. Going back to the role here, 101 is next year's class. Definitely going to be the 101 because he's in last and hasn't been adjusting his lineup. No, that's cool. Like, there's nothing wrong with having the 101, right? There's some power in that, especially if your league's super active in trading, right? You never know what kind of offer you might get for the 101, especially once you get on the clock. Just because that kind of gets everybody's juices flowing after being down for the off season and wanting to make a splash and have something to do. So I've definitely seen my fair share of irrational plays to get up to the 101 in that draft cycle. So it's not a bad position to have. And I hope it works out for you. I just, like I said earlier, I personally think I would have kept Burrow, but I'm much more hesitant to give up assets for picks. I'd rather give up picks for assets. All right, going back to Mr. Dan. In a league with 2 flex spots, they could potentially start there. So he also has Nick Westbrook, Akinai, Kean Coleman, MVS, Xavier Legette, and Jaleel McLaughlin. Yeah, I mean, with that, you're definitely going to be leaning on Olave, right? Like he is kind of the stalwart, the true X with a lack of receiving weapons. I think you do have some deep play upside with MVS. Nick Westbrook has been seeing a good, healthy target share there in Tennessee. Xavier Legette's just kind of plugging right along. Keon Coleman, I think his year might be next year. It's just between the injuries and just how Allen's kind of cycling the ball around. The Coleman pop weeks have been few and far between, and they're super hard to predict. So I'm probably not going to be leaning that direction in the playoffs. Kind of the same thing with Jaleel McLaughlin, right? Like we've seen a couple weeks where he's been able to pop, and then all of a sudden Javonte Williams gets out of Sean Payton's doghouse, and so then he carries the rock, and then oh, by the way, now we're going to sprinkle in, the fullback who's fallen in for touchdowns now. So the running game in Denver is kind of hard to pin down, but again, you need a guy to be able to pivot to in case you do suffer an injury. So I don't mind the bench, Dan, at all, but I would tell you that it probably Tillman and Chris Olave are probably the top two guys that you have there. All right. The role is Caleb, Jordan Love, Russell Wilson, and A-Rod already. Okay. So, all right. So the context does help a little bit, right? I think having Love and Caleb there gives you a nice youthful base of quarterback there in a 2 setup league. Aaron Rodgers maybe comes back next year, maybe doesn't, but he's definitely the 4th guy on this list currently. Russell Wilson's been playing really well in Pittsburgh. I don't see there being any reason why that wouldn't continue. I think Justin Fields is left as the odd man out there in Pittsburgh, and he's going to be looking elsewhere. And Wilson's going to stay and play under Mike Tomlin, in that system there in Pittsburgh. So I like the quarterback room kind of having that full context. So then you're adding JSN to it. You get the number 1 pick this year, so that allows you to go running back or wide receiver, kind of depending on how you want to do it, unless you get a blow up offer for the 101.
Yeah, I like it.
And Ashton Genty's a sure thing. I am not convinced of that. I'm just not. Like, I am not convinced that a guy who plays in the Mountain West and rolls over UNLV and, the likes of CSU and Utah State is going to be a surefire pro. Like, it is going to be a big step up in competition. And not that he won't be efficient, but I do not see him being the next Saquon Barkley by any stretch.
Right.
Now, we'll see how it goes through Combine, right? We'll do a deeper player breakdown. This is just kind of what I'm seeing live by watching some of the games, watching some of the highlights. I did not see any of the game tonight. I saw that Boise State won, so I got really nothing to add based off of tonight's performance. But I understand the fantasy allure and the fantasy value that is potentially there. I'm not saying that it is the exact same thing, but I am saying be cautious, because we sure thought that Brooks and Benson were going to be pretty surefire things going into year 2 of their careers, and so we drafted them knowing we might have to sit on them for a year, one because of injury, one because they're behind in kind of an injury riddled and older James Conner. And both instances, the running backs in front of them got healthy paydays. So things change in a heartbeat.
All right. Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see too, right? Once we start into the off season and we really start seeing what the combine looks like, and moreover, like what that kind of looks like. And keep in mind, right? Like this is one of those that even as surefire as somebody looks like in college, landing spot will play a huge bit of difference on that too, right? Like very well could be that the landing spot is a very undesirable location, or one of those that he's, if he's drafted into a immediate timeshare where it looks like at best it's a 50-50 split, like there's all of those things that factor into that as well. So alrighty, sorry about the delay there on my end. Where are we at with the chat?
We're here with John.
Alrighty.
So it's got Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix are both on a bye, starting Russ. Yeah, why not? Right? We just saw what Russ did last week, which was phenomenal, right? I don't know that anyone saw Russell Wilson going ham like he did. So the offense is capable of moving the ball through the air, which we haven't seen out of Pittsburgh since man, 2013 it felt like, right? Prime
Yep.
Ben Roethlisberger era. So that was kind of fun to see. And Russ is good for fantasy. It doesn't always look pretty in the real game. Like sometimes it's a struggle to get there. But even when he is in Denver, and as a Denver fan, as frustrating as that was to watch Russell Wilson run that offense, both under Sean Payton and
Hackett.
Nathaniel Hackett, for fantasy purposes, he did get there. Like he was still flirting with top 12 quarterback value, even though it looked like a flaming bag of dog poo on the field most weeks.
Yes. Yes.
It's been more efficient in Pittsburgh than that. Like it has been more efficient. So it's still kind of looks like a bag of dog poo in a lot of areas, but it's not on fire anymore. So yes, in the pivot, absolutely use them.
Right. I mean, that's one of those two that, yeah, unless you have somebody better to start, like that kind of is what it is when you have two other quarterbacks on bye. Like, um, you know, having at least somebody to start there is and getting points is better than the alternative. So, all righty. John Doe saying that they dropped Keon for Braylon. Is that solid? All bench guys.
Yeah.
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 I
We
don't
don't
mind it.
know. Well, and the thing that's now starting to scare me, at least in the back of my mind, about this Brees Hall deal, the Jets are out. Like they're not playing for anything. So if they get to a point where they just say, you know what, screw it, we're not going to waste our asset in Brees Hall, as long as, and what I haven't looked at yet are like performance matrix for his contract. Like that would be the one thing that gets Brees Hall back into the games. But if he's hit certain performance metrics and there's not really a snowball's chance in hell that he's going to get to a higher level metric, I could see the Jets just sitting him down. Like why put the wear and tear on him? If you have some young guys behind him, let them do their deal. We know we're not going anywhere. We know we're going to draft a quarterback because Aaron Rodgers wasn't the answer. Like all the things that are New York Jets eligible, I think Braylon Allen's a very solid pickup because of that unknown. Braylon Allen could be the league winner. It very well could be for a guy that you just picked up off the heap for week 14.
Yeah. There is that potential for sure. So, and Keon Coleman, as much as we liked him, especially coming into the season, like that just hasn't developed for fantasy this year. So we'll see what that looks like over the offseason. But at this point, there's, you've got a guy that should be starting and getting running back one reps if things are kind of trending the way they are with Brees this week. John saying Seattle or Titans defense. Problem is I have two players against both defenses unless I bench Brian Thomas Jr. for Connor and start the Titans D.
I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about benching or starting players versus a defense, right? You can, your guy could go off for 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, but the defense you start could still get 5 sacks, an interception, and a special teams touchdown. Like it's not apples and oranges. There's a clear path for both to set up points wise and be just fine. That being said, I think I'd rather start the Titans this week. Seattle's defense has been solid, but the Cardinals are finding ways to move and win games. Whether it's James Conner, whether it's Trey McBride, we saw Marvin Harrison Jr. show up last week. That was good to see. Like this Cardinals offense is efficient, right? They're not hyper explosive necessarily, but Kyler Murray does have them in a good efficient mode. So I think I would rather start the Titans defense this particular week. Derek, are you kind of in that same vein, or are you thinking something different?
No, I'm right there with you. Right, the Titans get Jacksonville and a Mac Jones Jacksonville led offense. Right, like that doesn't scare me in the slightest. One of the things that does scare me though, right, is you touched on that Seattle and Arizona matchup. There's a lot of jockeying at stake, jockeying for position in the NFC West with that matchup, right? Seattle has the game lead on this. Arizona sitting in the second, one game behind. They win this matchup. They're now tied for the division lead with only about 4 weeks left to go in the season. Like there's a lot of things that kind of start factoring in and playing into that. So that's one of those that I think that's either going to turn into a light, a Star Wars type of matchup, or we're going to see a very, very good defensive matchup. But I would lean on the side that both of those teams end up putting points up, and it wouldn't surprise me if we see the final matchup and the final score of this one be something like 27-24. Like I could see that particular game topping 50 points. And if a game tops 50 points, that typically doesn't spell good things for your for a defense that you've got playing in that one. Whereas that Tennessee Titans Jacksonville game, not going to surprise me if that one ends like 21-18. 14
Yeah, I was
to
thinking like 17-10.
Yeah. That was another one that was popped in my head, 14-10. Like those are the two kind of outcomes that I'm kind of seeing and projecting there. And at which point, give me that one that's less points scored as well. So you and I are in the same vein there, and same thought process. Any other thoughts on this one?
No, I think we're good.
All right, awesome. The roll over on YouTube, full team dynasty, 2 QB, full point PPR, 0.25 a carry, Caleb, Love, Russ, A-Rod, Kenneth Walker, Swift, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, Braylon Allen, Ray Davis, Zach Charbonnet, Miles Sanders. I know Yuck is what he has in there.
Everybody has a guy like that. It's okay.
Yep. Hunt, Akers, Tank, Bigsby, Trey Benson. Hold on, and then the
You're
next
not
one
playing in like an 8-man league or something, are you?
I don't see
That's a solid roster, man. I like the skill position players for sure. Like there's
Oh wait, it gets more. He says, "Hold on, I'll list the rest," and the rest is Drake London, T Higgins, DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith, Najigba, Waddle, Ridley, Leggett, Judy, Quentin Johnson, A.D. Mitchell, Marvin Mims, Mingo, Mike Williams, Kittle, Andres Izosivas, Cole Kmet, Noah Fant, Hunter Henry. What you think?
I like it. Now, I will tell you that Jonathan Taylor obviously hasn't done you any favors this year, which you well know. I'm not telling you anything new. You have a lot of really good depth and the ability to adjust, right? So I do like it. And really I like the youth for the vast majority of this roster too, right? Like you got some young mixed with the old. Like I like the Ray Davis, Braylon Allen. That's great. You know, having the Seattle backfield is great with both fairly young running backs. Jacobs and even Swift now are kind of getting a little bit older on the running back side, but it's still Jacobs has been really good for Green Bay here the last couple weeks. Swift has been hot or cold. That's okay. Hunt stepped in for you. Like I like this. Like same thing with the receiving core. You know, Drake London, really good year, right? We really like what Drake London's doing. He's kind of fulfilled most of what we expected coming into this season. So he has been definitely a player there in Atlanta that we've been happy that we drafted. T. Higgins, when he's on the field, he's been great. Right? You just need him to stay on the field. We were expecting a bit more out of him in a contract year. We're going to see if he did enough to get paid or if he's just not going to quite find the market that he was expecting. JSN, awesome. Waddle's kind of one of my do not draft guys now. Like I don't love it. It just hasn't seemed to work out since they got Tyreek Hill, at least consistently, right? We see flashes, but just consistently, it's not quite there. But yeah, and then being able to have the youth of Mitchell, Mims, Mingo, see if one of those got Leggett, right? See if any one of those guys pops.
Right.
But again, you got JSN there. Like I do. I like the lineup a lot. Like you have a really good lineup that you can switch out players and you get a lot of 1 and 1A situations. So I'm sure it's hard for you on game day making some of those final roster decisions, but I would tell you that overall it's a good place to be in because if one guy goes down, you have the ability to pivot over to someone who's extremely comparable.
Right. Yeah, I like it as well. He also let us know that it's a 10-person league and that it was Mark Andrews, not Andres there. So
yeah, even more so. It's a good 10. It's a good 10. It's
Yeah.
it's a really good 10.
Yeah, I would agree. I like
Right? You have
the
a ton of depth. I'm guessing you probably, much like the Burrow trade, right? You sacrifice some of the top end players to get more depth and be well rounded. I'm not opposed to that. Um, just be cautious that you're not creating so much depth that you never get the top end to really propel you to that championship.
yeah, that is or a lot of times I see a lot of guys that will move off of players, right? Because in Dynasty it's very much in the right, you want to be a year too early than a year too late for sure when it comes to moving off of players. But there's a lot of guys that are constantly reworking their roster to try and stay under 25 or 26, 27, whatever that is. And there's a lot of guys out there that are in that 27 to 30 window that dynasty players kind of like go, ooh, that they don't necessarily the value gets overlooked on some of those guys that can go out and win championships and give you some of that high end stuff. So that would be kind of the only thing that looking at that roster is pretty young throughout. There could be some potential to maybe add somebody that's a little bit older that can get you some of that top end still, but and with that age, not necessarily give up much to go get that, if that makes sense. Any other thoughts on this one?
No, sir.
All righty. John Doe saying, ugh, Sean Payton. Apparently he's not a fan of Sean, saying that they dropped Javonte because of Sean.
And that's understandable. I will tell you that Sean Payton's actually really good for fantasy football because his distribution tree is normally fairly narrow, right? We saw it in Seattle. It was Joe Horn and Jimmy Graham. And then Joe Horn left. And then we saw Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas left beginning of Chris Olave's rookie year, right? Alvin Kamara was there. Yes, they had the Thunder and Lightning year with Williams and Kamara, but realistically, his distribution tree's pretty tight. So Javonte is just there's something that he's not doing that Sean's been asking him to do, right? Like you don't get put in a doghouse for no reason. He hasn't been fumbling, and I haven't seen him miss like more assignments than what I would see on any other player necessarily, right? Like so there's something that's not translating from the film room to the practice field to the game that Sean's been frustrated with Javonte on. And the weeks where Javonte gets it, it shakes out okay. But then he does one little thing, it seems like he gets back in the sour side of Sean. So I understand where you're saying that, but historically, Sean's actually great to piggyback off of for fantasy because his route again, his point distribution is fairly narrow considering others.
Right. Well, it's one of those two that, I mean, Javonte Williams, if you were drafting Javonte Williams, you were drafting him as an RB3, which is he's currently RB32 on the season. Like he's firmly in RB3 territory. A guy that you were likely taking somewhere around draft pick number 90 overall. Like at that point, he's fulfilled that role and been pretty consistent as far as what the ADP was. So that was, where he was drafted certainly falls in line with what the performance has shown. So, and yeah, call it a little bit of a Bronco homerism here or whatever, but the fact of the matter is that most big organizations, when they rated the rosters for the for teams, had the Broncos as either the 31st or 32nd worst roster in the NFL. And this is a team that's fighting for a playoff deal, right? Like this was a team that Vegas didn't have them more than 5.5 wins, I think is what the line was entering the season. And they've well surpassed that. So I'm certainly job well done on a coaching side of that. But anyway, I'll jump off my fandom there. Alrighty. John Doe saying Braylon, rest of the season. Exactly what I was thinking. Great call, guys. All love. All right, awesome. And then John Doe saying facts on the defense. Arizona and Seattle going to be crazy. Okay. And then the roll over on YouTube saying that they swear that they've fleeced some league mates. Yeah.
Hell yeah. And that happens, right? That happens. There's trades you win and you win big. There's trades that you lose and lose narrowly, all the different formats. But yeah, you've definitely come out on the right side. I mean, it's worked in your favor. And there's nothing wrong with that. And you don't need to be ashamed of it either.
Absolutely. William over on YouTube. I had Stroud and Darnold, but dropped Stroud for Winston. Is Winston a better playoff gamble?
His playoff strength of schedule is a little bit easier. So, yeah, right. Nick Chubb has not been his normal self coming back from injury, and the Browns' offensive line has been a little banged up. So, the running game has not been as strong in Cleveland as it has been for the Texans with being able to kind of lean on Joe Mixon. So, I would tell you that, rest of season rankings, they're probably side by side. Like it's
I
just
have them.
super close. But again, Jameis Winston, there's something fun to root for Jameis Winston. Like that's okay. Like you just got to be able to live with the bad just as much as you enjoy the good, though.
Yeah. And that's where I've got those two is kind of back to back in kind of that middle QB2 range. So I don't mind it. And right now Winston's far more fun to root for than it's been rooting for Stroud. So I don't mind it. And like you already brought up that Winston has the slightly easier rest of season schedule there for the playoffs. So I don't mind the move. Installed over on YouTube, Braylon Allen, Tyrone Tasey, Isaac Guerrero, Grendo, Devon Achane, Chase Brown. What two do we sit? I'm starting Chase Brown for sure.
And Achane.
And Achane for sure. So that's really comes down to Allen, Tracy, Guerrero for the running backs there. And which two of those are you sitting? So which of the three are you starting? Or which one of the three are you starting?
I think I'm gonna play with the Grendo piece. I want to see how this shakes out. Like 80% usage, right? Snap share is kind of what the expected is for Grendo. He's shown speed and the ability to pop the big one. The Niners are alive, but barely. So they need big performances by everybody. So I'm gonna lean on Isaac here, pair him up with Achane and Chase Brown.
Yeah, I think I'm going to lean that same way, just from the standpoint that the Jets are, you kind of at that point, right, where I'm not necessarily wanting to really lean into that one. Tyrone Tracy, we've seen that kind of backfield split between him and Singletary down the stretch here late. So I'm right there with you that I think it's going to be Grendo for me as well. So Grendo, Achane, Chase Brown would be the three that I'm starting. Any other thoughts on this one?
Cosa.
The roll over on YouTube saying that they also have the 101 and 2 projected late first. Didn't even mention that Mitch Trubisky's still on the roster. Okay. John Doe asking, why does this dude have 5 tight ends? LOL. The role answering his own question, or answering the question for us, and this is about what I would have said there as well, is that it's a dynasty with a bunch of starters and roster spots. So, for those folks that have not played dynasty before, it's an interesting concept. Much deeper benches. You're not doing a draft every year. You're only drafting rookies, and in a lot of cases, you want to carry multiple tight ends on that one, just from the standpoint that that streaming tight end availability really isn't there, because in most dynasty leagues, if you're looking to try and stream a tight end and pick somebody
Brock
up,
right?
Yeah, if even that, right? Like there's some weeks that it's like, oh my gosh, I get to be able to start Brock Wright. Like you're typically talking the waiver wire of Lucas Kroll or Brock Wright or Harrison Bryant, Mo Alley Cox, Josh Oliver. Like those are the cream of the crop of a streaming tight end that you can expect to even be looking at in tight ends. So most of the time you're talking about guys that would be ranked in tight ends on tight end like 60 on a week. So that's kind of why that goes through. And so John Doe saying in Dynasty, it makes sense. They're in a redraft for 5 bench spots. Yep. So I can certainly understand some of that. And Jelly saying the role saying that some of those leagues with 5 bench spots is brutal.
Heck yeah.
And then the role also saying that I see some people with a guy like Washington or Lucas Schoonmaker on guys' teams and not even have those guys that are available on wire. Yeah, I've seen that too. Like there's a few of those. Some of those dynasty. I think we're in a couple of those different dynasty leagues where you have to start 2 tight ends each week, and it's brutal. Like there's weeks that you're rolling out there and like, yeah, I'm rolling out Johnny Munt to try and make some magic happen because that's the way the things have broken down for me. So, but yeah, so a little bit different deal there. You got some dynasty, you've got some redraft going to play, so makes sense. But awesome. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in here. So, guys, if you have any other questions, comments, concerns, let's go ahead and throw those in the chat. Let's go ahead and hit those up here as we go into finish out this week 14 and really try and bring home some some playoff spots and as we start fighting down the stretch here for this cash and trophies. But while we give folks a chance to throw any other questions that they have in there, any kind of thoughts, anything else you want to hit up?
No, I think just the reminder, right? You touched on it earlier at the PSA. We are not going to be live on 12/24. We are going to move that show to Monday, 12/23. We will still be kicking off at 11:15 Eastern time for that show. You guys will be able to catch it on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, like it'll be streaming on all the services, right? We'll still be going live that night, but we are not going to run it on Christmas Eve. And then that following Friday on 12/27 will be the final Friday night show of the season for us.
Absolutely. And then it'll be into the, we'll start working into some of the off-season stuff, all of that kind of stuff. And as we start getting prepped for the NFL draft and those, some of those off-season shows are just kind of fun because it gets, we get into some topics that we don't get to talk about as we, get going here with the season itself and really answering questions and going through that. So those shows are a lot of fun and make sure you guys are tuning in as well. All right. John over on YouTube, drop Cade Otton for depth. Seems like his run is over. Have Porta also could probably use another wide receiver running back.
I think it depends on who's your waiver wire. Like,
Yep.
I mean, Cade Otton still saw 7 targets last week. And 7 targets going to a tight end is extremely healthy, especially you start getting in kind of the barren wasteland of what tight ends can be. So I don't know that Otton's a guy that I'm looking to necessarily drop. Laporta's been hit or miss. So I think I kind of like Otton as the pivot. But again, it does depend on what's on your waiver wire. If there's something out there that's absolutely worth it, then you drop him. But if it's just dropping a guy to pick up some random depth, I'd rather have the depth at tight end.
Yep, I would agree with that as well. So the role saying Ridley or Braylon Allen this week, full point PPR, quarter point a carry.
I'm leaning Ridley, understanding that Allen gets that bone. I mean, does the bonus work, or does Rodgers just not throw the ball because he doesn't give a F?
Well, I mean, looking at it, right, like it would take at a quarter point, it's 1 point for every 4 carries. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm looking at that one as well. I don't know that Braylon Allen's going to see much in the receiving work. Say he gets 16 carries, which would be extremely healthy on that one. That's 4 points there. And say he gets 0 touchdowns and 40, 50 yards. I think that's probably about what we might see on something like that. You're talking 9 points. I think Calvin Ridley is a 10-point plus type of play this week. So, I mean, unless you think I'm off on some of that projection there.
No, I think that makes sense.
So I'm in the
I'd play
Ridley
Ridley.
boat as well. Yeah. So I like the matchup. I like the that there, and Ridley's. Yeah, it's the. I believe that I have played a pivotal role in that one. Ever since I've dropped Calvin Ridley in the home league, he's been on a tear. Right, like same thing happened last year. Right, I moved Ridley off the roster and all of a sudden went on a tear. So everybody that now has Ridley and has been living those benefits, you're welcome. All right, sorry. Moving on. Alrighty. William over on YouTube saying that they use the #1 waiver wire priority on Guerrero. Do they start him over Aaron Jones or Tracy?
I'd start him over Tracy.
Yep. I don't mind starting them over Tracy. I probably wouldn't start him over Aaron Jones. Yeah, I wouldn't start him over Aaron Jones, but I wouldn't mind starting him over Tracy in that split that we're seeing take place in New York. Any other thoughts on this one?
Nope. I agree with that. Exactly.
All right. John over on YouTube saying that new subscriber, appreciate the input. You're most welcome there, John.
I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Well, I do believe that that's taking us down here to the end of the questions and comments in the chat here. I think we're going to about call that a night unless you got anything else you want to hit up.
No, I don't think so. Good luck to everybody here in week 14, right? I hope that everything shakes out in y'all's favor and that these opinions really that Derek and I have kind of shared at least help you make decisions.
Yep. And so, we got one more coming in here. We're going to hit this one up. Abreu over on YouTube, start Guerrero over Chuba or Rashad White?
Yes, I don't want any part of going up against Philly's defense right now if I can help it. So that takes Chuba out for me. And Rashad White, Bucky's been on fire, so I'm not necessarily convinced that Rashad White's going to be seeing a massive workload. Definitely he'll get some, but I see Tampa Bay is kind of riding that hot hand, and right now it is Bucky Irving.
Yeah, I think I've got to agree with that one. Yeah, I just cosign. That's kind of where I'm at on that one. William saying thanks, most welcome. Alrighty, guys. Well, that's go and Abreu also saying thanks, guys. You're most welcome. Well, that's I think that's going to take us down to the end of it, and that's going to do it for us tonight. I do appreciate everybody tuning in, all the chat, all the interaction. Absolutely enjoyed the conversation tonight. Again, those programming notes that Kevin touched on earlier, week of on that 23rd, December 23rd is when we're going to be doing that show instead of the 24th. We're moving it from the Tuesday to the Monday night that night due to the holiday, and then December 27th will be the last show for the Friday night fantasy football huddle for this season. Make sure you guys are subscribe to the YouTube, ringing the bell, getting all those notifications, especially over the off season. We go live year round on that Tuesday show, and a ton of content coming through as we start getting into player profiles, getting ready for the NFL draft and for the next fantasy draft there as well next season. So appreciate everybody tuning in, chiming in, all the chats, all the interaction, but that's going to do it for us tonight. He's Kevin. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloos.